Okay, this is Robert. Hi everyone, this is Robert at English 360, and today's live session is all about how to get better marks in IELTS speaking exam, or in general how to improve your speaking, because if you improve in IELTS speaking, of course you're going to improve your speaking in general, aren't you? So there's a lot of there are a lot of things you can do to get better at speaking in general. So for example, you can practice, you can talk to people, you can listen to yourself, record yourself and speak. These are all kind of extra things you can do, but today we're talking about how to improve in the IELTS speaking exam. So one way somebody suggested was to dress up nicely. So you go to the exam, you dress up all nicely, your jacket and your tie, and that definitely makes a good impression. I'm not sure if you're going to get top marks by wearing good clothes, because if you don't speak very well, then you're not going to get good marks even if you're wearing Gucci suits and Rolex watches. You could try, but it's probably not going to work. So I would say that by the tricks I can tell you today are going to help you learn the ropes. So if you don't know the expression learn the ropes, I'll put it up for you. Wait a minute. So the expressions. Oops, that wasn't what I expected to do. Wait, whatever happened? Wait. This is the thing which happens in live shows, right? There we go. So expressions. You probably know I'm not renowned for my typing. My typing skills are not great. So today the first expression is I can learn. Sorry, just take that. I can teach you how to learn the ropes. That means I can teach you how to do the speaking, basically. In this case, learn the ropes. It comes from the maritime language, when there were sailors on a boat and somebody had to teach the new sailors how to, how to use the ropes. So this is an expression that you can use in English as well in your exam. You can say, for example, my teachers taught me how to speak English. They taught me how to learn the ropes, for example. You can also master the game, which is another expression, by the way. Master the game, which means learn something well by simply practicing, of course, because practice makes perfect. Another expression, practice makes perfect. And but this particular video live session is going to give you special insight into speaking marking criteria. Now I know criterion is singular, criteria is plural. It just sounds strange. You want to say criterias, but it doesn't make sense because it's like a exceptional word in English. So let's go. I'm just gonna swap the screen and see if I can move on to the next one. Here we go. So the first one is fluency and coherence. This, by the way, is from the IELTS course that we're using for our students. I'll leave the link in the description. And the first part, therefore, is fluency and coherence. So this refers to the ability to talk with normal levels of continuity, rate, and effort. I don't know if that makes sense. In the exam, you need to speak quite continuously, and if there are breaks, if you're not sure, and if you're wondering what to say, it can happen to anyone. It happens to me sometimes on the camera, so I perfectly understand you. It's perfectly normal. So don't expect yourself to be perfect in the exam, but by being fluent, by being continuous, you get higher marks. And this is the basis of speech. This is probably the most important thing. If you can be continuous, you're not making people wait. Because if people are waiting for you to finish your sentence, they get frustrated. Imagine if you ask somebody a question like, where's the nearest tube station? And the answer is, well, if I know, just wait. Next to the well, it's next to the bank. Yes, no, opposite, no. So you see, if you're stuttering, if you're not sure, you're gonna make people quite frustrated. So if they ask you a question, if you want to think about it, you can say that. You can say, well, let me think about it. And then you say, well, and you give your answer. So rate, by rate, they mean how often you're speaking, how many words per second, per minute are coming out. And effort, like, are you making a really big effort to speak, or is it natural? Is it coming out straight from, you, like without any struggle? That's the idea. Next one is to link ideas and language together to form coherent and connected speech. Now, this sounds obvious. If we speak, we have to be coherent. Otherwise, what are we doing, right? If somebody asks you a question like, do you like the place where you live? You can say, yeah, the gate is red, but the front door is blue. I go out quite a lot. So these three sentences have nothing to do with each other or with the question, so it's not coherent. So you need to try to be as coherent as you can, because remember, it's a stressful situation, okay? So when you're doing the exam, you're like tight. You're like, I want to get out of here as soon as possible. So, and how you link ideas together, that means, are you using the right vocab to link the ideas together? For example, simple words like because and so can do a great job. You say what you're doing, you say why you're doing, so you say because, and then you say so to say what happened afterwards. So the key indicators of fluency are speech rate, speech continuity, as I was saying. The key indicators of coherence are logical sequencing of sentences. So if the sentences are one after another in a sequence which makes sense to the listener. If they ask you about your past experience and you're talking about a special holiday you have, so you obviously start with when you left, where you went, what your expectations were, what you thought of the place afterwards, what you did during the holiday, what you did when you came back. So it's a nice sequence. You can call it timeline, for example. So that's important. Clear marking stages in a discussion. This is similar to what the first point is. There has to be clear marking, like every stage has to be marked by possibly a word like an adverb, like suddenly, like after all, or on the other hand. These are the kind of words, these are just some examples that you can use to mark a stage in a discussion, which is important. Then you have narration or argument, how well you can narrate something, how well you can say something. And the use of cohesive devices, the ones I was talking about, like connectors, but, so, when, etc. Pronouns, he, she, also relative pronouns like who, which, that. That was the place. That was the place I wanted to go to when I realized something. So pronouns are not only he, she, it, and it, but they're also relative pronouns. Conjunctions, of course, you know what they are. Within and between the sentences. So this is the first part of the speaking. This is the first criteria, you could say. These are the first criteria, so they've got two actually in there. So next you have lexical resource. So this criterion refers to range of vocabulary used, the precision with which meanings and attitudes can be expressed. So basically, they're asking you to talk about whatever they're asking you to talk about with words. The more words you use, the better it is. Well, not exactly the more the better, but you need to use a certain amount of words in order to speak. So instead of using the word nice all the time, you can use the words like beautiful, gorgeous, breathtaking, or inspiring, all these words. So that's what they mean by range. If you can use the range to enforce your meaning, then that's what they want. And next thing is the precision with which meanings and attitudes can be expressed. So you need to have a range of vocabulary, but also be very good at choosing the right ones. So in this case, you're talking about register, for example. If you're talking about a formal context, then you need to use a formal vocabulary. In a neutral one, you will use other words. In a story, you will use a particular kind of vocabulary, and when you're talking about a project to someone, you will use more official kind of language. So that's important. So the key indicators are the variety of words used, of course we talked about it, the adequacy of the words, so if the words are correct, and appropriacy of the words, so if the words are enough and appropriate, basically, and the ability to circumlocute, basically, I couldn't say the word, circumlocute the words, basically use words if you don't know other words. In other words, rephrasing. If you can rephrase words that you don't know, or rephrase in order to avoid repetition, that's what gets you good marks. You want to be using different words in order to avoid repetition and talk about the same thing from different angles. It's a hard job, actually. You just need to practice. You need to take a question, and you will find many of these questions in the course that I was talking about, and just talk about it. For example, if the question is on the things you like about your city, you can talk about monuments, you can talk about museums, but if you talk about them too much, then you're repeating yourself. So you can say, yeah, monuments are great in our city, and the museums are places where people spend their Sundays. However, these are places, so you're not using the word museums anymore. These are places where young people don't go, so they like to go elsewhere. Instead of using the word places, you say elsewhere. So that's what I mean by avoiding repetition. Just use different words. Next up is grammatical range and accuracy. When you study grammar at school, they say, well, grammar is very important. Well, it is important part of the speaking. It's not the only part, as you can see, but it is important. So you need to have the range. So this refers to the range and accurate use, appropriate use of the test taker's grammatical resource. So the key indicators are the length So how long your sentences are. If you say, this is nice, I am happy, I am glad, you are asking me questions, things like this, they're not very long. But if you can put them together and make a coherent speech, then the length gets you better marks. It's harder to speak in long sentences. That's why you need to practice. If you practice in long sentences at home with the questions, then slowly you get better. And oftentimes, if you just listen to yourself, record and listen to yourself, say, wow, that sounds good, or that sounds terrible, I can do a better job. And then simply by listening to yourself, you realize that you're making mistakes. The complexity of the spoken sentences. So am I using, second conditional to say that, to give advice? Am I using the third conditional to express remorse? By the way, there's a video out on third conditional if you wanted to watch it. It's on the channel. So you can use third conditional to express remorse or something you didn't want to do. If you're using I wish or if only, are using I would rather instead of saying, I prefer. So these are all kind of different alternatives. So it's important. The appropriate use of subordinate clauses. For people who don't know what subordinate clauses are, they are basically sentences which can't exist alone, but they add to the meaning of another sentence, thereby making that sentence more complex and getting you more marks. For example, if you say something like, I want to go to buy a coat for myself, I want to go to buy a coat for myself, that's a full sentence. It's a complete clause. But if you say, I want to go to buy a coat for myself if I have enough money, then that's a subordinate clause, because on its own it cannot exist, and it adds information to the main sentence. So if you're using subordinate clauses, then that'll get you better marks because you're just better at speaking. So remember, you get better marks by just being better. It's a natural consequences of your skills. If your skills are up there, and you can get your skills up there by practicing. I always say that. Even if you don't do lessons, even if you can't afford to go to a school because of whatever reason, you can always take a question, use the points I'm giving you today, the important different tips that you're receiving today, level up by simply applying these tips to your language. So instead of saying something in a very simple way, try to say it a bit more complex, because you're going to get more marks and it's going to sound better. Okay, so the next one is the range of sentences, structures, especially to move elements around for information focus. This, what they mean is like emphasis, when you say things like, I really like to go out with my friends, you can also say, the thing that I really like is to go out with my friends. Or other sentences like, never before had I seen a beautiful spectacle such as this one. Instead of saying, I had never seen a spectacle like this one before, you can move it round. And I can possibly make a million examples of how these inversions can help improve your speakings. I will drop the file with some examples in the description, so you can download it if you wish. So let me see. I can do that later. So, and the next one is they say the key indicators of grammatical accuracy are the number of grammatical errors in a given amount of time. I think the time is missing. Well, let me see. Given amount of speech. So it depends on how many errors you make. If you're making every sentence you're making a mistake, then that's too much. That's way too much. If you want to get a 7 or 7.5, So you need to cut out the stupid ones, which are the small ones, the third person, my brother going out with his friends, for example. And then you need to practice. Let me just go back, sorry. When you realize that you're making certain errors which are repetitive in your language, that you're always making those errors, first thing is to find those errors. Okay, so identify them. They're normally 3 or 4 or 5. Find them. They're little buggers, little bastards hiding in your speech. Root them out. Next, apply correction. Make sure that you repeat the words, the speech, and avoid those mistakes deliberately. Speak slowly if you have to, but avoid them. And if you do that for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, you will avoid most of them in the exam. And the last one is the communicative effect of error. So sometimes the mistakes are very minor. They won't make a big difference. You will lose marks, but not many. Sometimes the mistakes can be major. For example, if you're talking about future and you're using the past tense, then that's not gonna be good. So those are the kind of major mistakes which cost you big time. So those are the ones you don't want. Okay, so let's move on to the last one, which is pronunciation. So pronunciation, this criterion refers to the ability to produce comprehensible speech to fulfill the speaking test requirements. The key indicators are the amount of strain caused to the listener. So the strain means how much trouble you're giving this listener. So if I'm listening to you and you're talking to me in fluent speech, you have a heavy accent, very thick accent, but you're getting through to me very well without any major issues, then in that case, it might not be a big problem because you're not causing me problem. You're not causing me, the word they use is strain. However, like many parts of the world, the speakers have a very thick accent which becomes incomprehensible. In that case, that would cost you marks when the listener is struggling to understand you. Okay, so by the listener, they normally mean mother tongue listener. So anybody from America, Britain, Australia, New Zealand, other parts of the world where they speak English as a first language. And the amount of the speech which is unintelligible, which is incomprehensible, so amount of words that you say that can't be understood, and they really shouldn't be that many. So avoid them if you can. Don't worry. Rephrase the sentence. Just go back a little bit. Say, what I meant was, and if you're saying something like, the last time I went out with my friends was, and you say, oh, okay, no, sorry. What I meant was, the last time I went out with my friends was 2 weeks ago. Just say that slowly. So make sure you have rephrased the sentence, which is much better. And the noticeability of L1 influence, which means how close you are to the L1, which is the first language, British accent and American accent. Now, many of my students like the British accents, many like the American accent. It doesn't matter whichever way you want to go, but follow a certain school of pronunciation. Follow that. If you want to speak British accent, say walk, talk. Don't pronounce R's very strong. Say river, master. If you're American, then you follow that school of thought. So it's important that you implement some aspects of that particular pronunciation into your language and slowly develop that. I have often told my students that whichever pronunciation they choose to follow is fine, as far as it's pretty common, like American or British, and not some obscure country speaking English, which will not be considered as L1, the first language. So that's how you get better marks in the speaking exam. That's how you get better in general if you want to learn how to speak English better. I can tell you there were a few students of mine who got really good at speaking English, and one of the ways, I mean, I was just there to help them find their way through the process. One of the ways they learned was by listening to music and watching TV programs, because they imitated the accent, they listened to the people who were talking, and they imitated the accent, and they implemented those sounds into their own language. Little things like, that's the way it is, or I'm not sure what that means, or I can't really, one of my students said to me the other day, I can't really understand people who don't speak well, and he's not mother tongue, and he said that so well that it was amazing. So apply these tips, and I'm sure that you will improve. How much? It's down to you. Practice makes perfect. I'll leave the document in the description, so you'll be able to download the expressions and other tips that I've used. I'll leave the link to the course in the description as well. And for now, that's it. Take care of yourself and keep working, keep learning, and keep improving. Bye for now. Peace. Oh, that was quite a good session, actually. I hope students got something out of it, because it really was quite long, longer than I expected.